Good evening, ma'am, once again. So it's just 2-3 minutes yet for six, so we'll just wait. So good evening, everyone, all the participants. So this is the last session for today, and we are going to hear yet more time again from Shafali Ma'am. We had great insights about skimming, reading, and scanning. So let's try to hear it from Shafali Ma'am more about the reading approaches. Over to you, ma'am.
Thank you. So, as we discussed, now we're going to be taking the topic types of questions, strategies, approaches, techniques to get the answers correct in minimum time. One thing always remember with ACT passages that you're not supposed to give so much time to read the passage. You're supposed to apply the technique and find the answer. So, reading is, I would say, gone a bit mathematical, where you apply the technique and you get the answer. In reading passages, you never call it a correct or a wrong answer. We call the closest answer we are supposed to find. So now the types of questions, but first you should know how many questions are there for each type. So a big picture main idea, we're going to discuss all this in detail, are 10%. That means 4 questions. I'm talking this out of 40 questions, each passage 10 questions. Now fact based, little detail, 45%. Factual, that is 18%. Vocab and context, vocabulary questions about 3 to 4, that's 8%. Function questions are about 22%, that's 8 to 9 questions. Then you have function, and then you have inference questions, 15%. That's about 6 questions. So that makes it 100%, 40 questions. I'll share my screen and just make it easier for us to understand. Yeah, we'll talk about global questions. We'll talk about inference, detail, vocab, function, and fact-based. Ask about the passage as a whole, ask you to understand something that isn't directly stated in the passage, ask about specific parts of the passage, ask about a word as it is used in the passage contextually, ask about the purpose of a specific part of the passage. Fact, look for the evidence. So now the detailed explanation. So first I will start with the question that talks about except in capital letter, not or least. So some questions will include these words except, not, least, that you have to focus on capitalized. But students tend to overlook these words while answering a question. So whenever you solve this question, you're supposed to accurately look at the word to work through these questions. So now when you first read the question, focus on these words. Now, what is the approach and how you actually solve? First thing before we start discussing any question is, please remember, it's a very important strategy. It's called POE. POE means process of elimination. ACT, that's a very, very trap, a process of elimination, distortion. Misuse details, out of scope, is not in the passage. Extreme words we're going to discuss. Opposite, sorry, opposite, that means that contradicts the information in the process. Process of elimination is a weapon to solve the questions. Process of elimination basically means you know what's there in the passage, you cross out that option, and you focus, and then you get the right answer. So, elimination is particularly effective because then you can focus on identifying and eliminating the answer choices. Second step is rephrasing the question is a very important tool. By rephrasing the question, I means rephrasing into a simple term, a simple question. Predict an answer before you read the answer choice. Now, you know, in the previous session, as we discussed, we're supposed to read first, last paragraph, topic, sentences, last sentence. So when you get the information, you predict an answer, whatever you've read, whatever gets stored in your mind, whatever you've retained. So when you predict, there are chances the answer will never go wrong. Partly wrong answers are completely wrong. That means half right, half wrong will pull you like magnet. But if there's one word wrong, the answer will go for a toss. So, for example, if one or two adjectives is not accurate, so the answer is definitely wrong. So that is why we tell the students, more than focusing on reading the complete passage, skimming, and you go to questions and you read the options very carefully. With one word wrong, the answer will go for a toss. So next is answering answers that contradict the passage are often, you know, they're very, very tempting. This is also a part of elimination because it reminds you the idea of the passage, which those tempting words are completely opposite. So one thing you need to make sure that one mistake that students often make, your reaction in a certain situation rather than your reaction situation rather than the character reaction. Particularly, I'm talking about the literature passage. For example, let's say if your parent if your parent is haggling with a vendor in the marketplace, and you might be embarrassed with that situation, but but the character in the story is not embarrassed, so then you should not choose that answer because that describes the character as reacts with embarrassment because you have it as an option and that will pull you. So students often answer these questions incorrectly because they don't focus on the character's reaction to her mother, rather than they put their personal opinions, especially with literature and humanities passage. So, okay, this must have happened. So do not put your personal opinions here because it's just maybe a part of option they want you to. It's like a falling. You have those evidence-based questions. You have to read properly that first introductory and conclusion part. Next, the strategy is if you are finding, to understand tensed, those tense sentences, the difficult sentences, try focus on subject, verbs, cut out on modifiers such as adjectives, adverbs, prepositional phrases, and relative clauses. So when I talk about relative clauses, those begin with relative pronouns such as what, whose, when, where, that, which, they. Please note these modifiers can distract you from the most basic meaning and make your scores and options. You might pick those options because the author is not supporting those words. Like mostly, the author's tone, author's voice was not extreme negative or extreme positive. So extreme words, look at them with suspicious, and 99% there would never be answers. If the author has talked about it, that something is very dangerously happened, then you might go and pick up that option. But extreme words are never answers. Extreme words like, let me show you to make this more clear. Yeah, here we go. Extreme words in general, you should be, these choices, extreme words will include never, always, entirely, none, no, obviously, certainly, definitely, dangerously, likely, reject, first, eliminating, constantly, initially. So you have to focus while practicing on these words, look them with suspicion that this could be a trap, this could distract you, but they are never answers. Yeah. Next, the type of question after except, not, least question, we move on to a main idea question. So the second type of question which talks about the primary purpose of the passage, big picture question we call it as, central claim, organization of the passage, what is the passage all about, the gist of the passage. So if you focus on humanities, science, and social science, the main idea will typically come. See, if you know these strategies, it will get faster for you to solve the questions. So when you focus on these humanities, science, and social science, the main idea typically come at the end of the introductory part. That's the last line of the first. And the topic sentence means the first line. First and the last line of each body paragraph that supports the main idea for the main idea questions. But when you focus on literature passage, the main idea is not usually that straightforward, evident, and it's evident towards the end of the passage. So don't worry if you're confused, if you can't find the main idea, the last paragraph will tell you about the main idea. Literature passages primarily, they are concerned with depicting one scene, emphasizing on the qualities of characters with one relationship for one character to with another. So answering the other questions will determine the main idea. So please note, if you are not supposed to ever start, even if irrespective of the passage, you're never supposed to start with an accept question or the main idea question. Reading the introduction and conclusion and the topic sentence of each paragraph will help you to develop the main idea with practice, of course, and help you develop a picture of the main idea of the image in your mind. So during the test, you will notice that a main idea or accept question often comes first. The first two questions, I will show you a passage after this. It is wise temporarily to skip or flag. So flag is a very important function, so that reminds you that you need to come back to the doubtful question or the question that you've not attempted. So skip this question temporarily and return to it. So once you have answered the other questions, because the process of answering the other will deepen your understanding of the passage as a result of the whole, complete dependency of each question to another. So you will have a better working knowledge of the passage. Once you are done with the other questions, you'll be able to solve the accept and main idea question. Now, the third type of question I move on to, this is called a function of detailed question. When I talk about function, what comes to my mind? Function means a particular paragraph. It's a why question. Why means the purpose of the phrase or a quotation highlighted. They'll have that colored highlighted options, which I'm going to show you. Or the main idea, they might ask you the main idea of the this paragraph, lines. So don't get confused with the main idea, big picture question or a function question. Main idea is the complete passage, and the function is a part of the passage, a paragraph. For function questions, they're asking about the function of a paragraph or a sentence, that why the phrase has been used. You have to keep that why in mind while solving these answers. So look at least the strategy is 3 sentences prior to that line or a paragraph, or remind yourself of the context leading up to this portion of the passage. So reading above lines, the introductory line, the last 3 lines are always being suggested. You may also review the topic sentence of the previous paragraph to find the answer, the first line of the previous paragraph where it is highlighted, or the last line. Why? Because the effect of the author's incorporation of the detail when you first look at it. So first you read it. This would be very, very helpful. So you don't have to, what I'm trying to say is you don't have to depend on the entire passage. So these are those easy questions. So we start with, so once, as you remember, we discussed in the previous session, first and last paragraph. What about the rest paragraph? Rest paragraph will be covered with the function questions. So for example, they might ask you the purpose of the statement in line 62. That is how you will learn to identify the question that this belongs to a function question. Or they might ask you the purpose of a particular paragraph. So moving on to the next type of question, which is called the fact question or evidence. So these types of questions will ask you to find the evidence or the fact in the passage. These are fairly straightforward. Give the information by finding appropriate evidence, which is definitely the hardest part of these question type. So how do you approach? What is the strategy towards a factual question, fact-based, evidence-based question? You have to identify the keyword in the question. Now, while you read the question, yes, there will be a keyword that you have to learn to identify, and this question to quickly locate the answer. For example, let's say, how was Dan's performance? The keyword here is Dan. So now I will scan through the passage. I will look into the where are they quickly with the quick read. Once I've done my function question, once I've done my read my introductory and conclusion, where are they talking about Dan? So I go to that part and I find that evidence, and that evidence will match with one of my answer choice. Now, fact-based questions assess your ability to understand how quickly you can assess the right point of the passage, where it is based on your knowledge of the structure and the content of the passage. Questions like how to identify this particular question. They will ask you based on the passage. According to the passage, let's say Ted attributed which of the following characterized to the redwood. So the keyword here is redwood. I would scan for redwood. And I get my answer that matches with one of the options for sure. Okay, so fact-based questions are time-consuming if you don't focus on the keyword. If you learn to focus on that keyword, you'll be able to find the answer quickly and match it with one of your answer choices. Next, I move on to an inference question. So when I talk about infer, what comes to my mind? Infer means drawing a conclusion, looking for an implicit fact, which is infer means not stated directly. Considering the data available and developing a general observation based on the details, let's say, for example, you see a woman running through the airport, and what would you infer? You would infer that the woman is late for her flight. So, not stated directly. Let me give you another example. Shafali and Sanya, we're going for a party. I suddenly call her and say, I've got a severe headache. And I bang the phone. She's going to infer that she's not interested. So I didn't say that directly, but she has drawn a conclusion. So the implicit fact not stated directly would be an inference question. Or questions, how will you identify this question now? It can reasonably be inferred from the passage. The reason it has a long time since Sarah and Rose have seen each other. So, reasonably concluded, reasonably inferred. Here also, as I'm supposed to look for an implicit fact, if I connect it to my evidence question, I am supposed to scan for a word like Rose. I'm supposed to find a keyword here as well with this question. So fact question is a direct question where you get the fact directly. Inference is also where you draw a conclusion, but you find a keyword not stated directly. So now we also learn compare and contrast questions. Some questions will assess your ability to read closely, understanding relationship, and drawing the conclusion. So ACT reading test questions ask you about similarities and differences among the noun described in the passage. So focus on these words. So words like additionally, transitional words, essentially, in conclusion, moreover. So these words will illustrate a point in the same way. So these, when you have these words, the author is trying to convey something important and he wants you to focus here. And while solving these types of questions, compare, contrast, inference, these words, when you focus, you'll find the answer quickly. The author is trying to say something important. Questions like, with these words, beginning, obviously these words will be in the beginning of the sentence. So similarities, when I talk about the similarities, questions like similarities between what? Concepts, people, place, dates, or things in the passage. Differences, obviously the same between the concepts, place, name, time in the passage. For example, how would you identify this question? According to the passage, the relationship between primary colors and other colors can be best described by which statement in the passage? So here you need to focus on these transitional words. Next, we move on to the sequence question. The sequence questions about the orders of event. Now, these are the words that will help you. These questions are these words especially would really help you to gather the information like what happened first, what happened second, what happened third. So words like other, before, begin, eventually, initially, later, these are the words, if you focus, will help you with the sequence questions. So you will find these questions where? When you have to read a bit of the passage, and which passage do you read? Which passage is not direct? That goes for literature passage. So you will find these questions mostly in literature passage as they ask you to focus on events in order when they unfold the events, characters, when they ask you a question about the chronology of the passage, the structure of the passage. Questions, let's say, like at the time of the events, the story, the narrator is what? So these are ones, but these questions are not very frequently asked. So next type of question that I go on to now is vocab in context. Meaning, so when I talk about a vocabulary question, I mean meaning of a term, phrase in the context. Follow these steps and solve the questions. Look at the context clue to determine a word meaning. When you read lines above and below, there will be a clue that will help you to replace the word. Meaning of the context, but not the literal meaning of the word. So return to the passage, read the sentence saying that word. Suppose there's a blank, there's a dash to it in place of the word of the question. Then predict the word that would fit into the context. So you need to look at the context in order to get the right context, right answer. You cannot rely on pre-existing knowledge about the dictionary word because they will give you one of the word that's absolute same meaning that belongs to the literal meaning or dictionary meaning. That's a trap. So you just look at the question and you pick up. That's not the right way. I've seen students solving that way. You go back to that line, you summarize those two lines above and below, you come up with the meaning of the line. You see there's a blank, suppose just see there's a dash to it, there's no word, and you see what word best fits into the context. So we call it this process as a plug-in process. Plug in the answer choice that matches with the meaning of the context and replace it. If you go with the literal meaning, you will never get the right answer. If you go with the meaning of the context, you will always get the right answer. So the questions would be something like, as used, as this word predictable used in line 51 means, as this word choice used in line 41 means. So this is how you identify the vocabulary question. So follow the process of elimination, narrow down it to two options and select your answer. Now moving on to next. Always start with easy questions first, and then you go to the tougher questions. Easy questions are vocab questions, function questions. If you do these questions, you will get to read the center part of the passage, and those main idea and accept questions will be easy for you. So while solving the questions, you will have better working knowledge of the passage, and then you can solve those fact, main idea, and accept questions. It will also save a lot of time. So this approach is the most effective way as it enables you to get the maximum points. Easy, always remember easy to tough. First, you select your easy passage. Once you have analyzed which passage are you good with, humanities, science, social, then literature, whatever you're good with after practice. And those easy questions are function questions, vocab questions, and inference. And then you go to fact, and then you go to main idea and accept, because you'll have better knowledge. Then you have another type of question, which is called a character question. So as you skim in the literature passage, you try to develop a mental image of each character. So questions in fiction passage ask you about the general questions about the character, how they interact. So questions like, according to the passage, what kind of a student was Sarah? Character questions. Or based on the passage, which of the following comments would Sarah would most likely to say? So this is again a character question. So now we'll have a look on the questions to make it more comfortable for students. We go to the same passage. Set 1, we go to review. Now we learn to identify. This passage is adapted from the story Mother. It's very important to read the title. So the structure is, I read the first paragraph. I would go to the last paragraph, and the last line is very important. And then I will quickly skim through my first line and last line of each paragraph. So see, as I've not answered any questions, so it shows me blue. Never leave a question unanswered. Always remember there is no minus marking. So when you're not left with any time, predict, mark, but please don't leave a question unanswered. The passage is primarily told you from the sea. I told you the mostly first question is a main idea question. I would skip this. Reasonably inferred and accept. Inference question we discussed, not directly, but accept needs the knowledge of the passage. I would skip this again, but I'm going to flag it. So I go to this one, inference with the highlighted part. So now obviously the students have this question. I have not read the passage, ma'am. So I'm giving you a chance. We don't have the double time to read the passage. So once we do these highlighted paragraphs, we get to know about these passages and obviously about the paragraph and the main idea that we can connect, and we can solve this question. Inference means not stated directly, you draw a conclusion. I would definitely solve this question. Now the description and highlighted. Okay, highlighted gives me a chance to solve the question again. I read this paragraph. I would read the first line of the above paragraph. I would then go to the next one and read the first and last line and get my answer correct here. Let's do it. The description of the highlighted paragraph focuses on narrator's mother's preference. The instrument mother, so I don't really read it in detail. I would just skim through it and pick up the words like beaters, stainers, mama guarded, ugly tools, jealousy. The jealous word is very important. So given by her mother, so obviously that goes with familiar. The instruments my mother used were motley. This first line obviously gives me the answer. So you don't have to really read it in too much of detail. I would definitely solve it. This would be an easy question for me. I go to question number 5. I have again a highlighted question. So see, it's not suggested, recommended to read the complete passage. Now you get the chance because you don't have the double time, 8 minutes, 45 seconds each passage. Now I read this highlighted and I will also read the first and last line, not only the highlighted. Students tend to miss on this part. See, it says with eggs weekend mornings before he went out shows how inflexible he was. I would definitely solve it and consider it as a part of my easy question. I go to question number 6. Highlighted again. Very good. I get to read the paragraph only and I don't need to depend on the entire passage, but I've already read the first and last paragraph. And I go to question number 7. Inference. Inference, okay, it can reasonably be inferred from the passage compared to the kitchen scene, television, her mother. So here I have to find a keyword compared to the kitchen scene in the televisions and her mother's kitchen. So I scroll it up. I've already done this part. The kitchen was like a feeling of a workshop. So workshops are, and it says laboratory. Okay, so this gives me a feeling of the darker. It is obviously when I compare it to a workshop, obviously it's going to be less convenient, not more convenient. It's a trap. Dark less neatly. I would brighter. It's not positive. I have to see the sense of the lines. Are they talking positive, negative? I have to see the emotions. What has the author written? So obviously A and C directly I cross out. Then darker, darker, more or less. I pick up this less convenient. I go to question number 8. Okay, I got this highlighted phrase, except I would read the paragraph here. I would get the answer from the paragraph. I don't need to depend on the passage. Question number 9, inference, and then highlighted. So all we know now, we need to summarize the paragraph and we find the answer. Question number 10, last paragraph. Last paragraph, that reminds me of a function question. Why? Because it's not asking me about the entire passage, it's only asking me about the paragraph. I skim through, I scan through the last paragraph and I get my answer. That's how I solve a passage. So I hope these strategies you get familiar with and you follow the techniques of each question type and approach and the best possible way to improve. So that's all from my side. Thank you very much.
Thank you, ma'am. Thanks a lot. That was really, really a superb session. Uh, I could just get a gist of like myself going through all the type of questions when you were trying to explain in such a simplest way. You just classified all the types of questions, the different approach for the questions. So it was really a good session to know about how shall exactly one have a perspective towards all the different types of question, even within the passage, within the different types of passages. So thank you, ma'am. And so I would just like you to take through one of the question, ma'am. Is it the misconception that to solve the vocabulary based questions, you must know the meaning of that one word? We can, or else we can extract its meaning of sentence or paragraph, which relates us, which is best fit. Like basically, do we need to know the meaning or not?
Very good question. I was actually coming to it. Suppose sometimes you have a very difficult word which you really don't know the meaning, which suppose pragmatic, the word like pragmatic I would use. So students sometimes don't know the meaning of pragmatic. I'm not supposed to worry. I'm not supposed to give up and panic. I don't know the meaning of this word. What did I tell you? It's a blank for you. Where pragmatic is in line 51, for example, it's a blank for you. You read those lines, you read the above lines, below lines, come up with the meaning of the phrase, replace, see the tone is positive, negative, come up with a synonym, don't pick the literal meaning. It doesn't matter, you don't know the meaning. You have to go with the meaning of the line, not the meaning of the word. So
Okay.
don't panic when you have a heavy word or some extreme. It doesn't matter. It's a blank for you there.
Okay, I guess the doubt has been cleared. One more
Thank you.
question from my side, ma'am. Is there any specific books to refer for someone who would like to uh, enrich his skills into the grammar as completely from a beginner to advanced sort of?
I would suggest there's a very good book by Norman Lewis. It's called Word Power Made Easy. That's one of the suggested book. It's a very, very cheap book. One must have it in their library. It's like we should start reading. It's a session wise to enhance your vocabulary, etymology. That session wise, you should do one session every day. And I would still repeatedly say, please start reading. Read for 40 minutes. And if you're not a reader, I'm dividing in 20 minutes, give 20 minutes, make, someone, your teacher, post it, and then make that reading chart and do it consistently to get your comprehensions well.
Just a minute now. Okay. So, ma'am, there is one more question.
Sure.
How to reach to your team to get this important notes form of the Excel sheet? Uh, okay, I guess everything has been already shared. If in case there is any additional notes, I would coordinate with ma'am and their team. I will get back to you regarding this. And by this, I guess, ma'am, we have answered all the questions. Thank you from my side as well as from the students. It was really a good. All the sessions, the combination of all the sessions was really good. I guess they must have really got a good hold on reading comprehension by far. So let's end this day today on a good note. See you every day.
Sure.
See you everyone on the next week.
Thank you very much for having me.
Thank you, ma'am.